You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is May 25th, 2026, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we are bringing you the people and the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region, and also bringing you the news from a liberty perspective. Today, we're going to cover stories that sort of California related and some a little bit national. We're going to talk a little bit about the TSA and issues in the ICE, how ICE is sort of mixed into that. I guess you could say TSA is on thin ice, as best we could say it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the cancellation of an icon, Cesar Chavez, and that's kind of local to California. I mean, there's a lot of people in the nation who celebrate Cesar Chavez, but it's definitely a story that hits home in California. And then we're going to talk about all of the hospice fraud that is being enlightened rather by folks like Nick Shirley and CBS. Before we get into that, let me introduce you to our panel today. We have with us Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. My name's Jason McPhee. I'll be your host today. So we always start out the show with a Liberty quote. And this time, the quote, I think it's somewhat appropriate to one of the stories, and that's Milton Friedman, where he says, "Nothing is as permanent as a temporary government program." and I mean, this is one of the things where we just can't get away from the growth of government. You know, we start a program of some sort or another, in usually some good intention somewhere in there. And pretty soon the incentives just cause it to grow, and we lose sight of why it's there in the first place, maybe. And I think maybe might see a little bit of that with respect to TSA. But anyways, what are your thoughts on this quote, Leon?
Well, I think you said it correctly, because once we start these quote unquote temporary programs, then the people who work in these programs, the bureaucrats who work in these programs, they're incentivized to keep the program going because their own self-interest takes over, because they want their jobs, they want their perks that come with this job and everything else like that. So they have to go out and find more victims of whatever it is they're dealing with, or more people who they need to help, which is usually their good intentions. There's always some incentive for them to do the wrong thing. And these temporary programs, these so-called temporary programs, always end up being, as Milton Friedman correctly says, end up being more permanent. And when you think about it, it's only since the Trump came into power on the second time, actually, after 2024 election, that we have seen actually where things have been ended. And even when he tries to end programs, there are all sorts of resistance. The unions fight him. They go to court. The court will make some ridiculous ruling that that leaves the impression that the executive branch of government cannot run the executive branch. It looked like the executive branch of government have now become subjugated by the courts, and like the court is now the overseer of the executive branch of government. And I mean, you have situations where one single judge is telling the president of the United States how to run the executive branch of government when the president or his whoever is designate tries to end certain programs. So Milton Friedman is absolutely right. These temporary programs, they become embedded within the government. They spend a lot of money. There are a lot of incentives for people to do the wrong thing. So these temporary programs become permanent.
Yeah, I mean, USAID was a perfect example of that. And Elon Musk's Doge sounded like a great idea, and he couldn't get any traction. And even though Trump is a disruptor, and he's not, I think he's not necessarily worried about ending some of these programs, but when he tries, it's pretty difficult.
Yes, exactly.
So, and a lot of times I think he just throws up his hands, and he winds up spending a lot of money in other places anyways. So government grows regardless.
It seems like government is unidirectional. It always grows and grows and grows and grows. I mean, and the ridiculous thing about these politicians, and this happened probably on both sides, mostly on the Democrats, but it does happen on the Republican side too. Is that
it's baked in with the Democrats? The Republicans talk a great game, but in the end, they wind up with a lot of the same crap.
It's true. It's true. But the point is, though, they will have a projected growth of any program in government. Listen to what I'm saying, a projected growth. And if Congress a year later or 2 years later try to change the projection, lower the projection, say instead of it growing by 2%, they only wanted to grow by 1%. In Washington, D.C., that's a cut, That's a cut. Oh, they're cutting, they're trying to kill grandma. They want to throw grandma off the cliff and all this other damn nonsense because they want to change the projected growth from 2% to say 1%. This is just a hypothetical example. Just because of that change, they're talking about cutting these programs. Oh my goodness gracious. They're going to kill grandma. They're going to kill this one. They got that one. These people will be disenfranchised, marginalized. They hear all these damn nonsense, which is nothing but a bunch of BS.
Yeah. Well, we usually too, a lot of times we will talk just a little bit about the guy who made the quote. And, we're so used to talking about Milton Friedman on this show. I forget sometimes that if you tuned in and you're new to the show, you may not know who he is. But if you want to find out a little more about this guy, because this guy was definitely important in shaping a lot of my liberty values, and that's Free to Choose. He wrote the book in, I think, 1979, and he made the TV series based on the book in 1980. And that TV series is really wonderful and has a lot of good debate and background on a lot of very important liberty issues. So anyway, check out Free to Choose. Not a call to action.
On a personal note, you said I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, I was talking over you. My apologies. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just said check out Free to Choose, and not a call to action, just something you'll probably enjoy.
Yeah. On a personal note, you just mentioned that he helped shape some of your thinking, and I must say the same thing of myself.
Yeah, and it's funny too because I've evolved a little bit since seeing all of his stuff, but he was definitely my gateway to liberties. So anyways, let's jump into this first agency this first government program we're going to talk about that I'm not sure if they defined it as a temporary program, but they didn't seem to need it until just after 9/11. So let's in fact, I'll pull up the image where what we're going to talk about is the TSA. And of course, here's their webpage and their mission. And their background is it was essentially 9/11 that caused them to come into play because we had the horrifying terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center that killed 3,000 people roughly. Yes. And so they decided, hey, look, we need better airline security, and we need everybody to pull their computers out of their bags and take their shoes off and get to know each other better.
Take their belts off
for an hour. But I mean, the crazy thing is, right, that these things probably weren't the things that would have stopped anybody, because essentially these guys, took over the planes with like tiny little knife files or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a day when cockpit doors weren't sealed, so they just essentially got into the cockpits, and so terrible thing. But I'm not sure if the government fix of TSA was the correct one. But anyways, enough of the background on this. Let's find out what's happening today with it, because boy, is it a mess. And so let's bring you up to speed of where we're at with this news story here.
Now, LaGuardia is just one piece of the national system straining to keep up. Airports across the country hitting the same breaking point. Officials warning that if the funding isn't restored soon, that Hannah was just talking about, smaller airports might literally be forced to shut down entirely. We heard that threat last week, still talking about it this week. In major hubs across the country, wait times climb past 4 hours in some spots, forcing some airports to scrap the pre-check and clear lines entirely. So, forget about signing up for that, because they're focusing their limited staffing just to manage huge lines in regular security.
Wow. So TSA workers haven't been paid over a month. Lines are over 4+ hours long, and there's no fast pass possibilities either at the airports. This must be taking quite a toll on those TSA workers who are still there. Let's find out a little more about that.
TSA at this point simply running on fumes, with more than 3,000 agents calling out on Monday alone, and at least 450 others who've permanently quit altogether. We're hearing that number is getting closer to 500 since the shutdown began 5 weeks ago. It's become so unpredictable that some airports, including LaGuardia and Newark, have actually suspended their online wait time trackers.
So things not looking good. And it doesn't look like there's any legislative fix in the very near term either, as they're still wrangling about that. However, Trump has said that ICE agents are on the way to help. Let's hear a little more about that.
And it's not just TSA at the checkpoints anymore. As you mentioned, the Trump administration deploying ICE agents to more than a dozen major airports nationwide to help with that crowd control that we've been seeing. And it's a move definitely prompting backlash in many areas.
So what exactly will those ICE agents be doing at the airports?
The Trump administration now has ICE officers at what they are calling hotspot airports across the area as well, including here at Hartsfield, where we have seen some of the ICE officers already appearing to patrol the area outside of the main checkpoints. It'll be interesting to see sort of how they will be implemented into this process going forward.
Reporter Czar Tom Homan told ABC News.
What I see ICE agents doing is helping TSA plug the holes of security. And when you go to the airport, you show identification before you get to the x-ray machine. Maybe they can do that.
Yes, and so that's what we're dealing with, is huge lines because there's a dispute over the funding, and that's a little bit of a scandal in and of itself, because we'll get into that in a little bit. But I don't know, Leon, it looked like that one ICE agent was guarding the snack bar. I'm not sure. He was making sure nobody was going for the Pepsi and Coke. I'm serious. I mean, it's like, what are they there for? I mean, if either the TSA doesn't need to have much training, which means why are they there? Or, then if you can that easily replace them with people who aren't trained to do their jobs, right? Or they need a lot of training, which also doesn't seem very likely. I don't know. I mean, but the issue is, it just seems like this is a big kerfuffle. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but it's something that you would only see with government.
And that is the most important point that's being made here, is that there's always some government-run program that ends up with this sort of mess, and they bring that mess to us. And there's a big hypocrisy going on in here, that these lines are forming in all the major airports throughout America. These lines are being formed, and people have to wait 2, 3, 4 hours sometimes to get through the TSA checkpoints and all these sort of things. And members of Congress who are responsible for funding these agencies, and Congress has the power of the purse. The House of Representatives has the power of the purse.
I think this is where you're going, right, Leah? Huh? I think this story is where you're going, right? Delta.
Yes, exactly.
Passes for politicians.
Yes. So all these politicians still getting the perks. They don't have to go wait the 3-4 hours in line. They don't have to do that. The rest of us, the lessers, their royal subjects are the one who have to wait the 3-4 hours, and they could go to the head of the line and all these sort of things. But these people, especially the Democrats, are nothing but a bunch of crazy hypocrites, and some of them are literally insane. This whole funding DHS, which is the Department of Homeland Security, is all because of ICE. They want to get rid of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They want to get rid of ICE. And the way to get rid of ICE is let's stop all funding for DHS, according to these lunatics. And all ICE is doing their job as mandated by law. That's all they're doing.
Just to clarify, for anybody watching, TSA is part of DHS, and so is ICE.
Yes.
So that's the reason why they're tied together on the funding. Sorry.
Funding, exactly. Yes. Thank you for that clarification. So here we are. These people with their political agendas now. This have nothing to do with solving any of the problems here in the United States. per se. They, with their political agenda, well, of course, the Democrats want these illegal aliens here in abundance. They're looking for voters in abundance. So they open up the border during the Biden administration. Now their job is to keep these illegal aliens here in America. That is their whole job right now. And the way to do that is to make sure that ICE does not do their job. That is what they're trying to do. So they're holding up the funding while they're taking their nice little perks. Oh, I need to go to see my constituents. So now I get to the airport. So I must be taken to the head of the line. I'm a member of Congress. What's wrong with you? Can't you see that? And this is the hypocrisy that's going on while the rest of us are suffering because of these people and their damn nonsense.
Yeah. Well, another important point to point out, too, is that not all airport security is handled by the government's TSA. And so we actually have a situation here where 20 airports, it looks like, from around the country don't have TSA, and they're not seeing the lines.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly.
Why exactly did we need this government entity? if there was a way to do this with private, private security functions, I'm not. Anyways, go ahead, Leon.
But this is the anti-Midas touch of government. Everything they touch turns to crap. Okay, so here we have these 20 airports which seem to be functioning smoothly. They're talking about 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute lines at the airport because people are moving efficiently through the lines. But all of the airports, their checkpoints, all those checkpoints in airports that are the checkpoints are under the control and administration of the government of TSA, which is in the Department of Homeland Security. All of those airports are now suffering because of the inefficiency of government. Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Because all the airports, all the routes are tied together. So if a plane is delayed in one place, it's going to delay it even in the places where the lines are running smooth.
Absolutely. But we have a very clear example of private markets. Even though those airports, their checkpoints still have federal oversight, but we have the operation of private markets showing how efficient things can be done versus government with their bureaucracy and their incompetence. Here is a clear example of this, and still people want to push for more government. Every time we turn around, there's some new program, some good intention program. They want more of these things. Here is a good example. The government turns it into crap every single time.
Well, Leon, and the story gets even more convoluted with the craziness of government here, because the question comes up, how is it that this stuff is funded, right? How do the TSA people get paid? And for all of these people who are working for the government, they are getting paid out of a government pot. Now, the people who are, but the way that pot actually gets funded, it's funded through your ticket fees. So yes, you literally pay. So all these people who are paying and not getting the proper TSA service to get themselves through the line, it's because the money goes to government. In fact, there's a CNN story on this. One of the few times I'll shout hooray for CNN for getting
getting something right. Getting something right.
Yeah. But CNN actually had a thing that how are these guys getting paid? And the money that it's actually a portion of your ticket fee goes to toward the TSA. But the way it's structured is it doesn't actually then get dispersed directly to the TSA agents there. It winds up going back to DHS, and then they have to reapportion it back to TSA, which is nuts, right? Why do you need this middleman in Washington regulating how these people get paid? But what's even more obscene about this is that it's not just the money that gets set aside, it's supposed to be like about $10 per ticket. It's somewhere here in the story. I can't remember exactly where it's at, but it's about $11 per ticket or something like that that goes toward the security fee. And apparently about a third of that is being used for other government purposes.
Absolutely.
So they have literally, I think they put it toward deficit reduction, which means that essentially if they have other bills to pay, so they are literally robbing you as you go through. The security agency is shaking you down so that the government can pay for its other largesse that has nothing to do with this, right? So yeah, and I think here it is. They were saying currently it's $560 for a one-way trip, and I think it's like $11 or $12 for a round trip or something. But it's absolutely nuts. And I mean, this this story is a good story, I think, because it just shows the absolute insanity that is going on here, where all you have to do is just let the airports and the airlines figure out this stuff on their own, with insurance companies, and they can figure out what the risks are and price that risk appropriately and figure out exactly what security is needed. Unfortunately, we get a top-down solution from government and it turns into this mess, right? I mean, this budget fight has nothing to do with people flying from one place to another, and yet it's absolutely wrecking the entire transportation thing within the United States right now.
Well, this is a very good example of left hand. This always happens in government. Left hand and right hand don't know what each other is doing. So it's nothing surprising. It's just that maybe this is the first time we really been touching on these particular circumstances. But it's left hand and right hand. I mean, I am sure we could safely say, I am sure a private organization, a private company could do a much better job than the mess we're seeing right now in the airports. I'm sure of that. At least we can say that. But it's just incredible, the stupidity and inefficiency that we are seeing right now.
And here's the issue, right? Let's suppose that all the security was worth it, right? Then then you say, okay, well, maybe that's the price for being safe. Unfortunately, back in 2015, we found out that they had about a 95% failure rate.
Yes,
stuff that was coming through their weapons and explosives and stuff that they were audited, and they weren't catching this stuff. And maybe they fixed it, maybe they haven't. I mean, people had a lot of faith in it back in 2015 before they found this out. But we have a little video just to show you their efficacy and how they're falling down on the job just on this.
Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson reassigned the leader of the TSA and directed the agency to revise airport security procedures, retrain officers, and retest screening equipment in airports across the country. The changes come after an internal report found shocking failures in airport security, specifically the ability to take banned items right through TSA checkpoint.
The entire purpose of the TSA is to provide a sense of security at airports. Now, this study was from back in 2015, I believe it was, that it got reported on, and they had a 95% failure rate when they were audited. I mean, that's just nuts.
The series of tests were conducted by undercover Homeland Security agents posing as passengers. According to ABC News, the agents were able to smuggle items such as mock explosives and weapons through TSA checkpoints in 67 out of 70 attempts.
Anytime there's a high rate of misses, that causes concern.
Well, I should hope it causes concern. I mean, you guys are doing worse than the 20% proficiency rate in math of public schools.
This is not the first time the TSA has had trouble with security breaches. In 2013, an undercover investigator with a fake bomb hidden on his body passed through a metal detector, went through a pat-down at New Jersey's Newark Liberty Airport, and was never caught. Meanwhile, the administration still touts its dedication to safety and security.
So that was back in 2015 under Obama at the time. But I mean, this is the thing, right? We are absolutely destroying our air travel within the country. And for what? I'm not even sure the system works, right?
I mean, not only destroying the country, but I mean, all our personal liberties are being infringed upon. I mean, the other day I went to the airport. I was and I had in my backpack, I had just had oral surgery, and there was this mouthwash I put in my bag. I even forgot I had it there, but I was taking it with me and stuff. And they flagged it. They asked me, we need to open your bag. You know, you make it sound like, you know, I have something. I say, oh Jesus Lord, I know exactly what you're looking for and stuff like that. So I told him, well, let me just get it for you. He said, no, you can't put your hand. I can't put my hand in my own bag to show him what it is he's looking for and stuff. He said, oh, let me just look at it. He went in the bag. He pulled out this bottle of mouthwash. There's some oral thing. I don't know exactly what it was, but something I had to use.
It wasn't anything embarrassing, was it?
Yes. Well, you got to go take it and test it and then bring it back to me. And then they let me go. I mean, but they're infringing upon our liberties, our freedoms to do this so-called do their jobs. And it's ridiculous.
Well, and just from my own experience, I mean, it's sort of hit or miss. I literally flew once across the country, and I forgot I had a pair of fingernail clippers that I really liked. It had a tiny little knife on it. You know, it was like a little pen knife on it. And I made it out of Sacramento just fine. But when I was on my way back, they caught it at the other airport. And so it's just like, it's not even a repeatable test, right? Getting through security, right? Something that flagged in one place didn't flag in the other. I mean, that's just my own personal anecdote, but we've got this whole study that they conducted themselves and found a 95% failure rate. So, I mean, I don't feel like a conspiracy theorist here, you know, and trying to say that my experience is somehow, trying to apply my experience to everything here. But
well, I'm sure your experiences are not unique in any sense of the word, you know. So, I mean, you know, this nonsense is unbelievable. I mean, I know probably you could argue that there is some need for some level of security, but not what TSA is doing. We need more private intervention in the airport so that we could have the efficiency to get through the lines a little better, a little faster, and you know, at least have these things running smoothly rather than this cumbersome bureaucracy that is doing nothing.
Yeah, because top down from the center, if one fails, they all fail, right?
Exactly.
And that's the problem that we have here without competition. But if you're watching on public access, that's all the time for you we have here. But we will continue to talk online. Go to knuckleheadsofliberty.com to see the rest of the discussion. And we've got just a little more to talk about on TSA, and then we're going to get into Cesar Chavez and the hospice fraud that's been going on in California. So check us out there at knuckleheadsofliberty.com for the rest of the conversation. Okay, well, one of the other little crazy things about this story is that when Trump is sending ICE agents, I mean, one, it does beg the question, didn't we need the ICE agents to be, wasn't that super important that they were rounding up immigrants and now they're guarding Pepsi at the airport? or I mean emergency exits or whatever the hell they're doing. I mean, the videos I've seen, they're just kind of wandering around and doing sort of crowd management, I guess.
Yes.
And so it's kind of nuts. But now some of these guys here, there's this in Philadelphia, there's this district attorney Krasner has been making threats that he's going to jail ICE agents at these of the airports. I mean, the insanity of this government stuff is just, I mean, it just blows
mind-boggling.
your mind, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. You know what need to happen? Trump need to make an example of some of these people, okay? Because this district attorney in particular, his threats, that is interfering with law enforcement in the execution of their job. Okay, it's not to say these are some criminal organization or anything like that. ICE is a member as a part of law enforcement in the land. Okay, Trump needs to make an example of these people. If this man tries to arrest any ICE agent or do anything like that in terms of obstructing them in the execution of their job, I hope Trump will make an example of this man and arrest him. Seriously, I really hope so, because this is insanity. Honest. I mean, if you want to change the law about what ICE does, that is fine. You could advocate for it. You could go to your congressman or congresswoman, whatever, try to get them to change the law and do whatever. You want them to stop the funding or whatever you want to do. you could go advocate for these things. That's fine. That's how the country works. But if you want to think put your political agenda on the line and go interfere with them doing their job as mandated by the law, I hope Trump make an example of this guy and arrest him. Seriously.
Well, I tell you, as we leave this topic, I just wanted to remind everybody again that there's nothing quite as permanent as a temporary government program. And this TSA was started, like I said, just after the 9/11. I think it was started in 2001. And, this is where we're at. So,
unbelievable.
So yeah, it's funny. I mean, you might understand it too if like you saw some of these cracks and failures a few years into it, right? But I mean, we're 20 years down the line, more than 20. This is
more than 20, I think.
so anyways, I just wanted to remind people, but this does bring us up to Cesar Chavez, and he is in a bit of a pickle.
He's dead, so I don't know how much of a pickle he's in, but he's dead.
Well, he's in a bit of a pickle because his legacy is in trouble, I guess, because he was a farm labor leader, and he was, he's treasured by the left, and to the point where they gave him a holiday and statues everywhere. And in California, it's a state holiday that's going to come up here right at the end of the month. I guess it's next week. I guess it would be coming up. But anyway, so now suddenly it's come out that it sounds like he Me Too'd a few of his people. So I mean, it sounds like he actually raped some people that he was working with. It sounds like
allegedly. Let's just say allegedly. Okay, but go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. And this is part of the problem, right? He's been dead for so many years, and now this stuff is coming out. But that's kind of a side issue to the point. The bigger issue is that now Democrats are kind of running around trying to figure out, well, what do we do? This guy is kind of our hero. And so we do have a little bit of video to show you, kind of give you a little bit of background about what's going on with all these streets, monuments, and holidays. So here you go.
Cesar Chavez's likeness is plastered all over California buildings, with many landmarks and streets bearing his name. Cities and counties are reevaluating his legacy. College campuses have also started covering up his statues. From LA City Hall to places like San Fernando, where its Cesar Chavez statue was temporarily covered up in black tarp Thursday morning, the reckoning has been swift.
The plight and the struggle of the farm workers continues on, and we will honor that. But we are going to have to take a look at a variety of things, including the naming of holidays, of buildings, of streets.
Oh my gosh, Cesar, what did you do?
LA Mayor Karen Bass signed a proclamation renaming the last Monday of March to Farm Workers' Day in the city of Los Angeles. Sacramento lawmakers also announced a deal renaming the holiday. The fallout comes a day after the New York Times bombshell reporting involving sex abuse allegations against the late labor leader. Chavez, who championed for farm workers' rights, is accused of sexually abusing women and molesting underage girls. One survivor is the co-founder of the United Farm Workers Union, longtime activist Dolores Huerta. She says Chavez raped her in the 1960s and fathered 2 of her children and arranged for them to be raised by other families.
Ooh, that's bad.
And what would have been Cesar Chavez's birthday, the end of this month, will now be known as Farm Workers' Day, at least in the city of Los Angeles, as well as the state of California. As we heard, state lawmakers are also moving ahead with plans to do the same.
Well, I guess this is what the left does to statues that have fallen from their favor.
Meet everybody! CJ! Give up for your ass!
I wonder if they're going to do this with all of the people who they've honored with statues who they found out have committed crimes.
A 700-pound statue of George Floyd now sits in front of City Hall in Newark, New Jersey. It will remain there for at least a year. Newark City officials saying they hope it will serve as a reminder of the impact of Floyd's death.
I don't think the George Floyd statue is going away. By the way, we do have, because we're in Sacramento.
Floyd was a criminal too. He once had gone to the head of a pregnant woman. So I don't know what they're going to do with him now that we know about Cesar Chavez. Huh.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it's almost worse, the stuff that George Floyd was doing, right? So yeah, it's kind of crazy. But we do have a statue. We have a park. It's actually close to places that me and Leon have worked down in
Yes.
Sacramento, and they have a statue and a whole park named after him. And now it's got a bag over its head. I'm not sure exactly if they removed it or not, but I mean, it does beg the question. I mean, was Antifa Day in the running for the renaming of the holiday? I'm not sure, but that was the effect they were going for. But
are you done? I'm sorry, are you done?
No, that's okay. Go ahead, Leon.
There's an aspect of this story that I find rather disgusting. Okay, I mean, I don't want in any way to sound like I'm blaming the victims in any of this. Okay, not at all. I mean, rape and sexual assault, and especially on children, is already a horrible thing, and we should always treat those accusations seriously. I mean, but I want to see evidence that these things actually happen before we start convicting people. But the aspect of this story that I find very disgusting, the leadership of the United Farm Workers obviously knew about this thing. So I don't know what is the political agenda that they have ongoing to bring this out now. They obviously knew about it. And you know why I know they knew about it? There's not a single one of them in the leadership who's alive today who is saying, no, this could not possibly be. Nobody is denying it. Not a single person. You have not seen one single quote in the paper, on TV, anywhere where anybody is saying, oh, no, this could not have happened. Cesar Chavez's son is the head of the Cesar Chavez Foundation, which is something to keep his legacy going, or whatever.
Is this acknowledged son or unacknowledged son?
No. And I think that's an acknowledged son.
Okay.
Actually, acknowledged son. I believe it is. Even he did not even defend his father and say, no, my father would never have done anything like that. No, never. Even he don't deny it. So every one of these people in the movement knew about this man. They knew about his action. They knew about his conduct. But you know what? The movement was more important. Even that woman who is taking center stage right now, what's her
Dolores
name?
Huerta, I think is her name.
Yeah, Huerta, or whatever the hell her name is. Now, okay, she was a victim of Chavez, and that's horrible. I feel for her. Okay, he even impregnated her, and she had to cover up the pregnancy, and then let somebody else raise the children, all that and stuff. But the fact of the matter is, when they boil this thing down, that woman who was a co-founder of the United Farm Workers is also part of the cover-up. I find that disgusting. Okay, you could argue, well, you know, you could argue that, well, you know, in those days, you know, women just have many rights and blah blah blah. You could argue all that because this thing apparently occurred in the 60s. At least his sexual assault upon her occurred in the 60s and stuff. So okay, you could argue that, well, you know, maybe in the early days you could see where she might not want to speak about it. But you went from there to now, from the 1960s to now. Look at all the changes that have occurred about the rights of women. We went through the Me Too movement about 10 years ago and all of that. And even then, she never said anything. Now, if you are part of the cover-up after the fact, you're part of the cover-up, why are we now supposed to take you seriously? I mean, I feel for you, the fact of what happened to you, but why? This is horrible. If this man is such a monster, he was a monster when he did that thing to you, and he's a monster today. Now that he's dead 30 years later, he's still a monster. Why you think the movement was more important? Why? How many girls after her? How many girls, young girls, were assaulted because she kept silent? How many? We don't even know the count. But there are obviously, allegedly, quite a few. So those lives of those people were ruined because of this man, and you knew what this man can do, and you still covered it up. This is horrible. This is horrible beyond horrible.
Yep. No, I agree. And it does also beg the question too that a labor union you would assume that there's a lot of attorneys connected with the labor union, and you would assume that, some people would have said something, see something,
Yes.
say something. Right?
Exactly.
So, I don't know. Yeah.
But those people in the United Farm Workers Union, well, I have a bias against unions. You know about it. I don't have to talk about, but those people knew about this thing. Okay, they knew about this thing and they covered it up, right? And I cannot feel anything now when we see in these headlines about the labor leaders are stunned by these allegations and revelations. Really? When you knew about it, now you're stunned? You wasn't stunned when it happened? When you obviously knew about it? There must have been rumors about this man. Did you investigate the rumors? I am sure there are rumors are running rampant among the leadership. But did they ever do anything about it? Did they ever get into an investigation about it? No, they didn't do any of that. But I don't know. What I don't know, though, I truly don't know, and I don't yet understand, is why they decided to let us out now. 30-something years after the man died, why they doing it now? There must be some political agenda that we are so far unaware of as to why they decided to let that come out now.
Yeah.
I don't know. That part I don't know.
Yeah. No, it does kind of make you wonder. But I did think, too, this does kind of hammer down a point that we talked about a long time ago on the show, back when, we showed in that clip the Thomas Jefferson statue being torn down. And that was just one of many that was being torn down during the Summer of Love. That one particularly was in Portland. But at least that's why I believe the video clip said it was from. But this is, really begs the question that, I mean, why is sort of government running around putting up all these statues? I mean, government put up those statues of Cesar Chavez and named the parks and everything else, and now they're having to unname them. And it's sort of like, why can't we just let private institutions celebrate people from the past, instead of having the government propagandize certain people, right? And because, I mean, you look, George Floyd, really a statue for him?
Tell me this thing.
Yeah,
this criminal. I mean, he didn't deserve to die the way he did, but the man was a criminal. Jesus Lord.
But I mean, this is just the issue, right? Is that I'm sure there's a ton of people, just like there's a ton of people who celebrate Jesus, and there's all these places called churches that have statues of Jesus, right?
Yes.
And people can go there and celebrate Jesus. If there's a whole bunch of people who like George Floyd, put up your own shrine to George Floyd, and you can all go celebrate in the private George Floyd Museum or something like that, right?
Right.
Why are you going to inflict him in the public place on everybody else? And, now, of course, you're embarrassed about Cesar Chavez because you thought he was a hero at one point. Now you're realizing he was kind of rapey.
You don't want to, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
Allegedly, in case you want to sue me.
Exactly. I mean, because that is a little bit of a disturbing part of the story too, is the fact that these allegations come out when a person is long dead and can't defend themselves, which is kind of another sort of sad thing about this whole thing. But anyways, yeah. So there you have it. Do you have anything else on this, Leon, before we move on from it?
I just want to put a mild.
By the way, California is moving on from him. So.
Yes, I guess.
I didn't know if you had anything we may not remember them by the next episode.
No, but anyway, I have a mild pushback on something you just said. Okay, I'm not going to get into any big debate, but you said about government putting up funding to put up statues and celebrating people, whether it's Washington or Lincoln or whoever, whoever they decide to, as you call it, propagandize. Okay. The only thing I would say about that, and as long as our elected leaders are doing this, I mean, I think we should be okay with it. And if we want to change that, we should advocate our elected leaders or replace them when the election comes around. I mean, these are our elected leaders, so if they're doing nonsense, then we should punish them at the polls. So that's the only thing I would say about that. Even though And I know we could get into a long debate here about libertarian issues and all that kind of stuff, but that is all I would say about that for now.
No, and I agree with you. This is a responsibility of the people. It's just sad because our founding fathers would have been the last people who would have said that the public should be paying for statues for them to be put in public. So, in fact, it goes back to, I've done a few little talks on the penny before, but in coinage, our founding fathers literally didn't want anything other than Lady Liberty on the coins. So, I mean, we didn't have anybody's face like everybody else had kings. It wasn't until the Lincoln penny, it took them over 100 years to forget the lessons. And it was in 1904, 1905, Lincoln penny was the first president we put on a coin.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, that's, they were the last people who would have said, yes, I'm now Trump today, he probably would love a big statue of himself.
Trump would want to be everywhere.
yeah. But I mean, our founding fathers, George Washington, Ben Franklin, these guys would have been the most skeptical of having statues erected to them.
True. Very true. Very true.
Especially when they were alive. So anyways, but okay, well, let's jump on to our last big story here, and that is all of the fraud that is being uncovered here in California. I mean, if you live in California, you kind of knew there was a lot of fraud going on. You just couldn't always put your finger on all of it. But we saw the explosion of fraud in Minnesota, and that was, even though the government was already kind of looking into it, the federal government anyways, the state government was just allowing it all to happen in there in Minnesota. But the federal government had been looking into it, and then Nick Shirley came along and just blew it up with his citizen journalism. And now he's in California, and he's looking into hospice fraud. And by the way, in case you think Nick Shirley is partisan, CBS News beat him to it in California, and we're going to look at a piece of theirs too. But because Nick Shirley's pieces are a little bit more spicy, let's start with the Nick Shirley piece, and we'll go from there. So here we go.
This is the sound of hospice money. Could you just answer the question, what's the need for 1,000% increase in hospice care here inside of LA?
He's back, and he's here in California, unfortunately, for Governor Gavin Newsom.
California may have the largest amount of fraud in the country, as California is the state with the highest taxes and collects more money than any other state in America. It is filled with fraud. California's version of Medicaid, called Medi-Cal, has more than doubled since 2022 from $108 billion to a proposed $222 billion in 2026.
These numbers are absolutely wild. I mean, I just don't understand how a state or a country can go on with this level of fraud and lack of accountability.
Their population, however, has not grown exponentially. However, their spending has. There has been 1,000% increase in hospice care in the Los Angeles County. In fact, 1 out of every $10 of home health care in America is spent in Los Angeles. It is estimated that the fraud in California could be in the hundreds of billions of dollars.
And again, that is Nick Shirley, and that is his. That is a short clip from a longer clip of his. Or he has like about a 45-minute piece on that you can go find online, where he goes into a lot more detail. But yeah, it's absolutely nuts. And let's see if we can bring up a visual from this. This is let's see. This is from an oversight committee here in Congress, I guess, has launched an investigation, and I guess they're thinking that there's at least 3 or 4 billion of fraud that they think. So, I mean, when Nick Shirley said 200 billion, he may be talking about just all sorts of fraud. I guess that maybe that number's a little blown up. But
most of the focus has been in LA County, to be honest. So,
yeah.
So who knows, California wide, what it would really look like?
Yeah. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But one thing that, I guess before we get to any more, let's look at a little bit more of I guess in case you're thinking Nick Shirley's too partisan, let's look at what CBS News did here, because I think that most people have a hard time arguing with what they found, and so let's jump to their video and let people kind of dig in on that.
69-year-old Dr. Lynn Ianni just ran me up and down the pickleball court. But 2 years ago, she was, according to Medicare records, dying in hospice care.
I was in treatment as physical therapy, simply because I had kind of an injury on the pickleball court. The administrator at the office was like, they're not going to pay any of your claims. And I was shocked. They said, you're in hospice. And I said, what? What are you talking about? Are you kidding me? Do I look like I'm in hospice? She goes, no, I know you. And when
Ioni's Medicare number had been stolen and used by a company to fraudulently enroll her in hospice care, which she obviously didn't need.
So obviously this woman does not need hospice care, and fraud is being committed in her name. Let's look a little more into CBS's report.
So blatant.
Hospice patient advocate Sheila Clark has been raising alarm on this one building in LA for years. This building, our investigation found, is home to 89 registered hospice companies. It's called the Merabi Professional Medical Plaza, and it's the most extreme case of hospice clustering that we found.
And this particular building, I noticed, I'm like, dang, how can there be that many licensed and certified hospices in this tiny little building?
So in case this is starting to look familiar, it's a lot like what we saw in Nick Shirley's videos from Minnesota. And actually, Nick Shirley is here looking into this as well. It's just that CBS beat him to the punch.
CBS News reached out to the almost 60 hospices that have 5 or more flags. Many numbers were disconnected or went straight to voicemail. Representatives at some others denied any fraud and said they run legitimate hospices with real patients. Back in Van Nuys, we tried the hospice right next door to VML. We knocked, then called during the posted business hours.
You can't leave a message because the person you called has a voicemail box that hasn't been set up yet.
Wow.
Bye.
We couldn't reach anyone, and we'd soon realize these operations may be connected, part of what advocates describe as a web of hospice agencies that come and go, but continue submitting a steady stream of bills to taxpayers.
Let's dig into some of the numbers that CBS uncovered.
Federal records for hospice agencies tell you a lot. State auditors have identified warning signs when they're looking for fraud, like multiple hospice offices packed into one building, or caretakers whose patients who are supposedly at death's door are discharged alive. According to our analysis, 72 of the 89 registered hospices in Merabi Plaza have at least 3 of those potential warning signs.
Absolutely stunning scale of fraud. The federal government is actually saying they suspect it's around $3.5 billion that's happening here in California as far as fraud goes in hospice.
We weren't the first ones to come to this building. Federal inspection records show that regulators visited multiple suites in Merabi Plaza between 2021 and 2025, and they found nearly 400 violations. At one, a nurse wrote that a patient's family was satisfied with the care, but inspectors found no one from the hospice ever even visited that patient. At another, the patient's chart listed medications for malaria and diabetes, but the patient told inspectors he wasn't taking either one. And at that same company, a hospice social worker wrote about a family's grief when their loved one had passed, but there is no evidence the patient was actually dead. These hospices have been billing Medicare for reimbursement with your tax dollars for years.
And CBS gets a quick take from the federal government on this as well.
We're also following the money here. Medicare is federally administered. It's your federal tax dollars going to these hospices. So we sat down with Dr. Mehmet Oz, who heads the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Is this accelerating the enforcement, the shutting down of these hospices?
We have dramatically accelerated our ability to take out the bad guys by stopping their payments. And that's the big mindset shift. I want to make it clear, we're not going to pay you money just because you sent me a piece of paper with a bill on it. We're going to check to make sure that's legitimate and that document is evidence that you actually performed something that's helpful to the American people, or you're not getting money from us.
And so there you have it. And by the way, I made a mistake there earlier. As Leon pointed out, I said 3.5 billion in California. That's just Los Angeles. So that's nuts.
It's unbelievable. So what does the rest of California look like? Is God knows what, right? God knows what. You know, it was such a big deal when we were pointing to Minnesota, who was showing about 9 billion, I think was the number at the time. And I mean, all kinds of people were involved with that. And now we have here in California, which, you know, we both live in California, and we don't know what the number is going to end up looking like. We know about 3.5 billion in Los Angeles County, but statewide, we could just imagine what it's going to look like. This could be a fraud so large that God knows we never get to the bottom of it. I don't know. We need a lot of Nick Shirleys. We obviously do. A lot of them running around and trying to uncover some of the mess of this this fraud that has been going on and ongoing and have been ongoing for many, many years.
Yeah.
But this just speaks to the larger problem of the size of government, that the larger government becomes, the easier it becomes to hide fraudulent conduct for long periods of time. So I am glad that we are getting to the bottom of some of this fraud, this hospice fraud here, the whatever the fraud it was in Minnesota. I mean, and I'm sure there are other states. I think Ohio is one of the other states that they're talking, and Illinois are some of the other states where some of this fraud is ongoing. So we need a lot of more Nick Shirleys to really and truly dig into this thing and expose this thing. We might be saved. We probably could save God knows how many billions of dollars if we could get rid of the fraud in government, because there's a lot of it.
Well, you know that there's a few interesting aspects. One is in Minnesota, we saw it was an awful lot of it was a disproportionate amount of immigrant fraud in the Somali community. And in LA, what Nick Shirley was showing is there's a disproportionate amount of fraud in the Armenian immigrant community.
Yes.
So these are, you know, it's funny if you ever watch that show, The Shield. I used to watch that years ago. But the big thing in that show that was the background thing was the Armenian mob and this Armenian money train. I couldn't help but, you know, sort of tie that back to this, you know, and hey, you know, maybe this isn't just all Hollywood stuff.
You can't make this stuff up, man. You can't.
Yeah. But I tell you, though, you know, you said, you know, we need to see more Nick Shirleys. Well, I think most people would agree with you, except for Democrat governors. And you know, the one in particular right now is Gavin Newsom, you know. So, and Joe Rogan called him out on this because Gavin Newsom, his press office, actually made up some AI meme of try to be like Nick Shirley coming in to check on these daycare centers and other things, and it's like he's some kind of perv. He is doing Gavin Newsom's job.
Exactly.
Root out fraud, and Gavin Newsom's making fun of that. I mean, that just shows you how demented these Democrats are, right? I mean, the idea that you know, here, you know, potentially billions in taxpayer money are being stolen, and Gavin Newsom is running cover for them, right? You know, by literally trying to shoot down the citizen journalists who are out to uncover it. I mean, that's just nuts. So what an absolute slimer. And thank you, Joe Rogan, for pointing that out on here.
Well, exactly. You know, but it says something though, Jason. I mean, you know, I don't want to pick upon, you know, any politician because, you know, to say that, you know, the other side is perfect, or like look at the Democrats and then say the Republicans are perfect. They don't do these sort of things. But you know, the fact of the matter is though, the overwhelming, and I'm going to say overwhelming because I think this could be backed up by fact. The overwhelming amount of people involved in this fraud, whether it's in Minnesota, whether it's in Illinois, whether it's in California, the overwhelming number of people involved in this fraud are Democrats. Either they are Democrats or they are Democrats affiliates. Over and over again, whether it's Gavin Newsom and all his cohorts below him, whether it's Tim Walz in Minnesota and all his cohorts, or Pritzker and all his cohorts, or whoever it is, the overwhelming amount of these people are Democrats. And if you look for all of the programs and good intentions that we see that are talked about on TV and everything else about all these Democrats trying to save people, it's always the Democrats pushing for a larger government, a more expansive government, a government that is more intrusive into our lives. It's always the Democrats doing this. So we should not be surprised now to find out that it's the Democrats that are involved overwhelmingly, even though I'm sure we could find a few Republicans along the way, but it's the Democrats involved in these things overwhelmingly. This fraud, this misuse of taxpayers' money, it's the Democrats doing it overwhelmingly. And I'm not even going to say allegedly. I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah, it's absolutely scandalous. And yeah, like you said, fraud happens whenever you have government. So, it's no panacea just because a Republican is running it, but it's baked in with Democrats.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They're preaching it, right? So it's absolutely nuts. But anyways, I think, did you have anything more before we jump on to the or Knucklehead Noise Patrol to round out the thing?
No, I just hope people like Nick Shirley, and I mean, I'm surprised that CBS was really involved in some of the exposures. But I really hope people like Nick Shirley and more people like that reporter with CBS will keep on the work of exposing these kinds of fraud that I am sure is rampant in our society.
Yeah,
seriously. So I hope to just keep on the good work.
Yeah, and unfortunately, my video is going in case you see me jumping in and out and trying to adjust my camera, but the focus is off. But anyways, let's jump into our Knucklehead Noise Patrol. And in this one, it also has to do with another kind of fraud story, but we're talking about issues of voter fraud. And in this one, we are talking about Mazie Hirono. It's funny. I've heard a lot of outrageous things this week, so I don't know that it is the most outrageous thing, but it definitely, kind of a knucklehead thing to say. But essentially, she's saying that an illegal person or a person who can't, a non-citizen who's not supposed to be voting would never vote because it's against the law. Right? So anyways, we have a very short video on that to share, so let me pull that up here.
Non-citizen voting in federal elections is already illegal. It is a federal crime. If a non-citizen illegally votes in a federal election, they could be prosecuted and even sentenced up to 5 years in prison.
Where else do we have laws against fraud where we still require ID? How about a bank? Or maybe what we've just been talking about earlier in the program, the TSA? And so there you go.
Mazie have a solution to all our crimes. Okay, to every crime, whether it's voting, whether it's whatever, non-citizen voting and all that, whatever. She have a solution, and everybody's missing it. All you got to do is to pass a law, make it illegal, and that will be the end of the crime. All right, yeah. And that's what Mazie is saying. All right, it's just the rest of us too stupid to understand that. Mazie is my favorite moron, to be honest. My favorite idiot, to be honest, because I don't know how that woman truly became a U.S. senator. This woman, I mean, this is only a sample of some of her idiocy. It's only a sample. I mean, we could go back and look at some of the things this woman have ever said. It's unbelievable. She's such a moron. I mean, she makes idiots look like Einstein, to be honest. That's what she does.
Leon, I thought you didn't want to pick on any particular politics.
I'm sorry. When they bring up stories about Mazie and Abby, I just can't help myself, Jason. I just can't.
Yeah, I'm sure she's nice when she's handing out other people's money. Probably the only time, but but one of the things you do have to wonder, I mean, if people wouldn't do things that they're illegal, I guess we must have never had a mass school shooting because those were all supposed to be gun-free zones.
Exactly. There we go. I'm telling you, just pass a law, we'll solve all the problems. That's Mazie's logic.
Yeah, I mean, clearly those people, it doesn't happen because none of those people would have ever done that because it was illegal. Yeah, and I mean the crime was a lot more than a 5-year punishment in these cases, unless maybe you're in a blue state and then maybe it's a maybe it's a slap on the hand. I don't know, but. So, but yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? If you're literally saying that, and that's why I pointed out banks and the TSA is because if nobody is checking, right? if you, I mean, if we have things, we say it's illegal to go in and steal money from somebody else's account. So how do we make sure that somebody doesn't do it ahead of time? We just tell them you need to come in with an ID.
Right, exactly.
You know, and the
if
same thing
if
with
you want to if you want to vote and you want to make sure that illegal citizens, illegal non-citizens they're not going to the polls and voting, you just say, well, you want to vote, come along, please. We would love to have you voted. Show us an ID. Prove that you are who you say you are. That's all. No big deal. I mean, if I go to the polls, I don't want nobody else voting for me. Okay, and I don't want any non-citizen voting in elections where they could sway the results. I don't want that. So if you want to ask me for my ID when I come to the polls, I have no problem. Just ask me. I'll have no problem. I really won't.
I will say one word of warning though. If this SAVE Act does pass, if you're a non-Democrat, make sure you have a copy of your birth certificate handy, because you will need that to register. Right? And if you've made it this far as a Democrat, then maybe you won't be a Democrat by the time you vote. So, you know, this information may help you too. But yeah, you know, that is the one thing though. You will need a copy of your birth certificate, because that's what you're going to need to register. So you don't need to show up every time with the birth certificate, but you need to the first time you register, you have to prove that you're a citizen. So,
right. True.
Yeah.
True.
So
I think it will allow them to use a passport also though, to register.
Well, yeah, because in order to get a passport, you need to show the birth certificate. Yeah. But this shows you, I mean, how bad of a job that Democrats have done with these issues of ID, right? Because most Republicans probably think all I need to do is show up with my driver's license. But because they have watered down what a driver's license means and all this, they've handed them to people who aren't born here. And so that's why that piece of that piece of identification isn't enough anymore. And that was the crazy thing. Yeah, I mean, when we go right back to the TSA, I mean, they require real ID now to fly. Well, why? Because they watered down driver's license, which used to be just fine until they started handing them to everybody who was illegal. Right?
Illegals, some of them who can't even read English and causing also the accidents on the street.
Yeah, commercial driver's licenses.
Commercial driver, yes.
But then the craziest thing, we talked about this on the show before too, the real ID now isn't enough. Right. So the real ID is a fake ID, because if you want to vote, you got to prove you're a citizen. And actually the real ID is not enough to prove that you're a citizen. That's why you got to get that birth certificate or show up with your passport, type of thing. So either way, those will do. And there's a couple states, I think, where the real ID has an option that you can have that proof, that level of real ID. Otherwise, it's not quite a real ID.
We need a super real ID, Jason. A super real. That's what we need.
Yeah. Oh, I could go on forever about the government definitions and well, they have these. Well, they have this standard. We've talked about the electric vehicles in the state of California and all these other things. Well, before that, we had these emission standards on cars, and at one point they were called low emitting vehicles. So you call them an LEV, right? And then they'd say, oh, well, now we want to have a lower standard, so we'll call it an ultra low emitting vehicle. So and then they decided, well, that's not clean enough. So then they decide, okay, we're going to have a super ultra low emitting. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Only the government could come up with these innovative things, Jason. Can't you realize that only the government could? That's why they're so innovative and so efficient and so everything else. Only they can come up with these things, man. What are you talking about?
A lot of times they don't spell it all the way out, because otherwise you'd realize how silly it was, but they call it a lev, ulev, and a sulev. Anyways.
Oh God.
Well, I think that's about all the time. Leon, do you have any last thoughts before we amscray here?
Well, I think it's important that we root out the fraud in our society. I think Milton Friedman is absolutely right. Too many of these temporary programs become permanent, and they become fraudulent at the end of the day because the government is always growing, and it's so easy to hide fraudulent transactions. So, too much bureaucrats touching our money. That's our money, taxpayers' money. Too many bureaucrats are touching it. They are too incentivized to keep these programs going. So we have to root out the fraud, and I hope people like Nick Shirley and that reporter from CBS, which was kind of surprising that CBS was doing this. But I think we need more people like that working to clean up some of the fraudulent things that are going on within our government and within our society.
Yeah, very true, very true. And by the way, before the next show, something you may ponder on, it looks like Milton Friedman's pondering right now as he's looking at that quote of his. But think about the fact that in the Constitution, there's no mention of a Federal Reserve. There's no mention of a TSA. There's no mention of governments running all the schools. There's no mention of and there's no mention of government-run healthcare either. And yet, all of these things we assume today government needs to be involved in. Just consider that, that at one point in our Constitution, we didn't need that. They weren't mentioned by our founding fathers, and for some reason we've migrated into thinking we need those things run by government.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Anyways, thanks so much for watching. Until the next show, think about what you can do in your community to move the ball for liberty. And until then, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.